Many fans and analysts are doubting Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. They improved their roster, they addressed every need, but they're still doubting him. But you know who's not doubting him? The data.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for subscribing, liking, giving me 5-star ratings on wherever you get your podcast. Let's talk about the data, the FPI. So ESPN's FPI was updated after the spring transfer portal window and spring ball, and it is sort of a predictive measurement of just how good teams can be or teams will be at the start of the season. And so last year, Colorado ended in the FPI as the number 77 team in the country, which was pretty low. They finished the year 4-8, obviously. They had, in terms of efficiencies, they were one of the worst teams in the country in both categories. Their defense being the worst of the two, ranking as the number 97 team or 97 unit in the country. Their offense was a bit better, but still, it was a little bit difficult for the Buffs to get things going. And then, obviously, they also it didn't help that they had a pretty tough schedule, I think you could say. Realistically, the Colorado Buffaloes had to play a ton of ranked teams. And I don't want to say that their schedule was too tough for where they were, but they had a top 40 toughest schedule in the country. They played Oregon, USC. They played a lot of good teams, and it got difficult for them. So how does the data factor in Colorado's transfer portal class, the recruiting class, their spring additions, or spring ball? And let's just talk about the factors that I'm going to tell you. Colorado has improved dramatically in the FPI rankings. And let me tell you why. There's a few reasons. Colorado last year had probably the worst offensive line in all of college football. They go out and add, 3 offensive linemen from the high school ranks, or high school/JUCO ranks. And they also landed around 7 to 8 transfers across the offense line. Their defense line, horrendous last year. Couldn't stop the run, couldn't tackle, couldn't generate pressure. They go out and add a ton of defensive talent. They had guys with experience in the SEC. They had someone like BJ Green, who was an all Pac-12 defender. They add guys like Samuel Kunalola, who had 5 sacks as a freshman. They added talent everywhere. They took a couple flyers on a guy like Anquin Barnes from Alabama, who's 6'5", 315 pounds, big dude. Quincy Wiggins, former 4-star recruit, big dude. They got really good corners to help replace Omarion Cooper, and pair him with Travis Hunter. They addressed every need that they had. They bolstered the offense even more than it already was. They got more wide receivers. They got a guy like Will Shepard, who was a really productive receiver in the SEC. They got a guy like LeJontay Wester, who was one of the country's leaders in catches this past season. They have speed everywhere. They have size. They have talent. And so they jumped up from, like I said, they were in the 77 range, to now they are ranked as this 36th team in ESPN's FPI. And so you were probably like, what in the world? How does this actually happen? And so here is sort of the skinny on what is going down with Colorado. So if you I'm sorting. If you look at what they're projected to do, it projects things such as their win-loss record, what percent chance they have of winning out, what percent chance they have of winning 6 games, which would qualify them to make a bowl game, their chances of winning the Big 12, and their chances of making the playoff, making the national championship, and then winning the title. So Colorado has a 63.2% chance of winning 6 games, which means they'd be in a bowl game in year 2, which I know a lot of Colorado fans are like wanting to be like, they're going to win 9 games, they're going to win 10 games. Anything else is a disappointment. I think a bowl game for Colorado would be a huge step up, just because if you look at what they've done over this past decade, the only time they've made a bowl game was, or the most recent time, was when they were in the shortened COVID season, 2020. So they only played Pac-12 teams. They went 4-2 with Karl Dorrell, who that was his first year taking over as the head coach, and there was a little buzz. And then he goes 4-8 the next year, 0-5 the next year when they ended up going 1-11. But other than that, they made it to the Alamo Bowl in 2016. So they've made 2 bowl games since 2008, and they haven't finished above 500 since 2016. Well, they did in 2020, but that's kind of a weird season. So they have a lot of room to grow. So a bowl game would be huge for this program. Now let's look ahead. Let's get a little too much dip on our chips here. So obviously there's no divisions in the Big 12. It's just all straight up who's going to win the Big 12. Colorado actually has a 4% chance of winning the Big 12, which is more than programs like Iowa State, Baylor, Arizona State, and right below a team like West Virginia. Now, winning the conference is going to be difficult because you have teams like Kansas State, Utah, Arizona, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma State was in the Big 12 title game this past year, and they returned a lot of key players. So it's going to be tough to sort of fend them off, and they're going to be looking to be on the right end of the Big 12 championship game this year. They got blown out this past year. So Colorado, 4.1% chance of making or winning the conference. They have a 5.8% chance of making it to the college football playoff, which is a very sizable margin. Obviously, if you win the playoff or win the conference you're in, or if you're Colorado and if you win enough games, probably say, like, I think for a team to not win the conference and make the playoff, you'd probably have to make it to the conference championship game. But what does this FPI rating tell us about Colorado? One, it tells me that the data shows Colorado's transfer portal additions are much better than people are giving them credit for. I think last year, and I totally understand it, people have like fatigue of Colorado's portal because last year they had the number 1 class, and then all of a sudden the season's over and everyone's like, well, their portal class wasn't that good anyway. So it's not shocking. Their portal haul was bad. They got a bunch of bad offense linemen. They got a bunch of bad defense linemen. They got guys who weren't physical enough. They got guys who were getting pushed around. And I understand why people could be fatigued from that, because it's like, okay, last year they had the number 1 class and their portal class wasn't good. And now this year their portal class is, I think it's ranked in the top 10 somewhere. And you're expecting me to tell me they have a lower ranked portal class. We've already seen the portal thing kind of not work, and they're going to be better. But this year it's actually going to be better, because I think the biggest difference last year, and I think the FPI is kind of attesting to this, Deion Sanders in Colorado took anyone with interest who was trying to come to Colorado. Anyone who was like, you know what? I think I want to play for Coach Prime. I think I want to play Power 5 football. I think I want to play at Colorado, where Deion Sanders is the head coach, where there's going to be a lot of attention. And it didn't pay off because they were just bringing in anyone. This offseason, they were more selective. They were more picky about who came in. They were taking in guys with experience. They took in a lot of guys who had experience, and then they took calculated flyers, where it was like, okay, this guy didn't play a lot at insert FCS program or insert group of 5 program, but we're going to take him this year. That was last year. Whereas this season, it's like, okay, this guy was a former highly ranked recruit who just didn't play a lot, but has multiple years of eligibility and kind of understands that he's a multi-year investment. That's a big deal for Colorado. And I think that's where it's going to pay off for Coach Prime and sort of the future of this program. So I think that was a really interesting rating, to say the least. Obviously, ESPN's FPI could be right, could be wrong. Only time will tell. But the data is telling us that Colorado has a chance to be good. So if you're a Colorado fan, be excited. When we come back, we're going to be talking about where the rest of the Big 12 ranks in ESPN's latest FPI. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're not looking in the right place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire, and that's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege and post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, share this with a friend, share this with your mom, your dad. It doesn't matter. Share it with anyone so we can grow our family and we can continue to have fun. By the way, if you guys like sports, but you don't love all the yelling on TV, I got just the thing for you. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. So we're talking about the ESPN FPI. It's a little confident in Colorado, has them ranked in the 30s, which is a lot better than where they finished last year because they were in the 70s and they finished 4-8. They're projected to end up at around 6-6, which I mean, that's bowl game material. That's a really big step up for Coach Prime. Now, obviously, do I think a 6-6 season would kind of be disappointing for Coach Prime? Probably. It'll be the last season he coaches his son or his sons, excuse me. It'll be the last season he has Travis Hunter. Likely, I mean, unless Travis decides to run it back for one final year. So, what does a 6-6 season mean? Well, it just means that the Big 12 is a lot more competitive than people realize. And I think a lot of the times that we look at the Big 12, it's like, yes, it's not as good as the Pac 12, but doesn't mean it's not that good. And so I feel like that's kind of the fine line we have to draw. And so let's kind of get an understanding of where the rest of the Big 12 ranks in ESPN's FPI. So I'm going to go through where each of them rank and just give a little tidbit on each of them, starting from the bottom going to the top. So from bottom to top, the Houston Cougars are viewed as the worst team in the Big 12. They are ranked as 78th. And again, the FPI, Football Power Index, is a measure of team strength that is meant to be the best predictor of a team's performance going forward for the rest of the season. It represents how many points above or below average team is. And it's based off 20,000 simulations. So they ran through a lot of tests, a lot of simulations to get to this. Houston is viewed as the worst team in the Big 12 right now. They're projected to win about 4 games. They rank 78th. Houston has a lot of changes. You know, they have a new head coach, Willie Fritz, who I'm very high on. I really liked Willie Fritz and what he did at Tulane. They just obviously have to rebuild. Dana Holgorsen didn't work out there. And so now they have to make up for a lot of talent lost, and they have to sort of start from ground one under Willie Fritz. Next up, BYU, 73rd. Their projected wins are at 4.8. BYU loses an experienced quarterback in Keaton Slovis. It's just not where they are hoping to be. They have Kalani Sitake still, who I think is obviously the right guy for the job. I just feel like BYU is still adapting to being in a Power 5 conference because they were an independent prior. So that's a tough draw for them. Cincinnati still recovering from losing Luke Fickell. They're at 65. Scott Satterfield is kind of on the hot seat here. 5.2 wins projected. Arizona State, 63. They're at 4.7 wins, but I think Arizona State was a quality team last year in the Pac-12. They had a really good defense. Their offense, surprisingly, with Kenny Dillingham, just wasn't where it needed to be. Now, granted, their quarterback play was mid, we'll call it. Baylor Bears, 5.8 wins. They come in at 55 in the country. Iowa's 47th, 6.6 wins. Matt Campbell, maybe on the hot seat. He was at one point viewed as like the next hot coach, and now I think he could be coaching for his job in a year or two. We'll have to wait and see. Then obviously Colorado, we know, is at 36. West Virginia, one spot above him at 35. Then it goes UCF at 32, which kind of surprises me because I don't feel like UCF is getting enough buzz, but I do think that team will be really good next year. TCU, who Colorado beat on the road last season, they're expected to take a major step forward. They're ranked at 30th by the FPI, 7 wins. They have a 7.9% chance of winning the Big 12, which I think is a pretty big step up from where they were last year in the sense that they fell off. This is where it gets a little dicey for me. Texas Tech at 29. Texas Tech is a dark horse team. They're the epitome of a dark horse team where it's like, okay, we had a lot of expectations for you last year. You let us down. So what are you going to do this year? Do the same. And this is where those kinds of teams punch you in the mouth and prove you wrong. And then you have Utah at 27, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. I think that's way too low for the Utes. Oklahoma State at 26. Arizona at 24. Kansas State at 22. And then Kansas at number 17. So what does this tell us about the Big 12? Being that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams within the top 30 and 8 9 teams within the top 35. Well, it tells us that the Big 12 has a lot of teams that could contend. It tells us that the Big 12 is going to be very deep. It's going to remind me of the Pac-12 where it's going to be like week 9, week 10, and it's going to be like, okay, these 7 teams mathematically can win the Big 12 or compete for the Big 12 title. And that wouldn't shock me at all. It shouldn't shock you because the Big 12 is here to stay. They're here to make some noise. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised at just how deep it is. And I do think it's going to cannibalize itself a little bit because I don't know if there's an elite team, but the Big 12 is going to be really good this come 2024. So you guys need to make sure, put some respect on the Big 12, but also you kind of have to understand that this is a good conference, even though it's not like the Pac-12 was last year, the SEC or the Big 10. So yeah, when we come back, Colorado's SEAL training again. Is that beneficial or is that going to hurt them? I think it's making them mentally tough, which is exactly what they need. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, moneyline, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Go check out Luka Doncic. He has a beef with Kristaps Porzingis, his former teammate, Kyrie Irving. Beef with the Celtics. Are they going to be able to sort of channel those emotions and turn it into a win? Or are they going to be able to hit their scoring marks? Go check it out. Go check out the odds over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, give me 5 stars on wherever you get your podcast. Share this with a friend so that way we could grow our community. Also, let's get some questions in the comments so that way when I have some guests on, we could discuss those pressing matters. Okay, Colorado's doing SEAL training again, and a lot of people are clowning them because obviously it's Colorado, so why not? I think people look at anything Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders, like I think I saw people criticizing. I think I saw people criticizing the food that Coach Prime's putting together just because it's Deion Sanders. You know, you look at this Colorado team and it's like they're a non-traditional power. They have a head coach who's doing things differently. They have a sort of cocky energy, sort of a us against the world energy, and people hate that. And so naturally people have to hate on them. So the SEAL training thing, it happens again, and they're like, oh, here we go with Colorado, thinking that they're going to be good this year. And I don't think the SEAL team train, I mean, I'm sure it has something to do with football in the sense that like you're going to condition well, you're going to get your strength up, you're going to like just be mentally tough. And I think the mentally tough and sort of adversity aspect is what Coach Prime wants here because this team last year, and I'm not saying they didn't have mentally tough individuals. I think Shedeur Sanders was one of the toughest MFers out there. Like that dude was just constantly getting hit, constantly under pressure, got up every single play, and literally had to be held out of the games. Like he was before that, I think it was the Utah game. He was like, I can't walk without my back hurting, or I can't do this without my back hurting. Couldn't throw, couldn't run. Like that dude is as tough as they get, and people still question him. So this Colorado team, they were a little mentally soft last year. And I think we saw that when the team collapsed down the stretch. So if they could get through these trainings together as a team, if they can motivate one another, if they can motivate themselves, the sky is the limit. Now, I don't know, like I've never done SEAL training. I've never pretended to be in the military. I never will. I appreciate those who served. I obviously don't know how much the SEAL training has to do with X's and O's. And so for the people criticizing for that, sure. Now, people need to realize every team across the country is doing some sort of summer conditioning training, whether it's running the track or running the stadium steps. So Colorado's just taking it to another level. They're making it a little more intense, and that's okay because they need to be prepared for anything that will be thrown their way. And a lot of what Colorado is going to be dealing with next year or anytime Coach Prime is on the sidelines is the mental strain that comes with playing for Deion Sanders, not because of anything kind of because of what he does. He has such a platform where people want to hate on them. And so by default, they hate on you. And so if you're a Colorado player and you're not mentally ready for that, that could be draining. It could be hard. It could be difficult to deal with. And so Coach Prime is setting this team up for success. And I really like what this team's looking like in the offseason. You guys comment below. What do you think Colorado's record will be in the 2024 season? I know a lot of people are projecting bowl games. Some people think sub 500. You let me know what you think. So that way, when I do my record projections, I could kind of gauge where the crowd is at, and maybe we'll differ, maybe we won't, who knows. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs, making me your first listen today. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, give me 5 stars wherever you listen, and I hope to see you guys on our next episode.